Alright, there it is. Just sharing these people. Un momento. Where is it? Almost done. Alright. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juanying Layth, bienvenidos a todos. Pakhair ragle people, marhaban and swagatam, swagatam. Right, so Sharmila Afzal Ji, I'll watch for a bit, then I'm Toba Toba. Right, Ahlan wa sahlan bikum, Ya Qawm, Ahmad. Momo is in the house, people. Momo is in the house. Alright. Terran, Fraudy, Frubry, Carlos. Alright. Alright. ¿Qué tal, Carlos? ¿Qué tal? Wasif, salam from Vancouver. Rash is in the house. Doing it, doing it. Hakan, ahlan wa sahlan, all the way from Germany, Almania. People, Ayub. Great to hear from you. Yep. God, was it chest day today? It actually was. Hi. See, not much changes in this boring life, does? Hi. This world, huh? What is it except words, people? There's the truth, and the rest is just simply words. Right, whilst people are tuning in, that reminds me. On that note, there's a poem from Ahmad Faraz, I believe it is. A very popular poem, but in it he has this line, this bait, where he says, "Bahut aasan tha tere hijr mein marna jana." That बहुत आसान था तेरे हिजर में मरना जाना, फिर भी एक उम्र लगी जान से जाते जाते. Those of you that understood that, what he said is that how easy it was for us, that once you'd left me, he's saying to his love, that once you'd left me, it was so easy for me to just die. That was it. That it was so easy for me to die. That बहुत आसान था तेरे हिजर में मरना जाना, फिर भी yet एक उम्र लगी जान से जाते जाते. Yet it still took me a lifetime to eventually die. You see, the interesting thing is that this can be taken in two. There's two ways of looking at this. One is that the suffering, and this is probably what he meant, the suffering still endured for like an entire lifetime. That's how long it took him to kind of like really come to terms with this tragedy. That's probably the way he meant it. But then there's another way to look at it, that really it's a kind of blag. That it's just kind of really just like he's just lying to her in a way. Like he's saying how easy it was for me to die once you'd abandoned me, yet it still took yet I still lived an entire lifetime. फिर भी उम्र लगी जान से जाते जाते. That I still managed to span out an entire life before before I kind of finally kicked the bucket. So I see both sides of that coin. It's amazing, amazing. There is actually, whilst people are tuning in, there is actually I've got a poem of John Elia that I can share if there's the bit of the mood. Agar mood ban raha ho to. Right, whilst people are tuning in, those of you just tuning in, click like, click share. Mu'adh, is that you in the house? You're doing it. Sharmila is saying it's all lies. Some heartbroken people online tonight. Oh, how the heart breaks, huh? I should have one session just for all the heartbroken poor souls. Dukhi atma. Jo bhatak rahi hain, you know, these souls that are just they're stuck meandering around. I should have a session for them, all the way from New Zealand. Ahlan wa sahlan. Mazari is in the house. Hi Mazari ji. That would be an interesting. But on that note, since there's a few heartbroken people, and there's on that note, I mean, I might as well read a poem whilst people are tuning in. This people is a book of John Elia, Hazrat John Elia. Amongst my favourite poets, one of my favourite poets. If this is the right book, that is. Yeah, this is the one. This book is called Shayad, which means perhaps. Look at that, look at that. So whilst people are tuning in, the rest of you, you can click like, you can click share. Lord, don't worry about it, people. Spread the fitan and fasad. Spread it. On tonight's show, I will be taking a look at certain issues like an overview, a holistic overview of earrings for men. So I thought I'd wear mine just to... Why preach something if you're not going to practice? Yeah, you know what it is? It's this consistency that has killed me in life. It's this, you know, the fact that I couldn't do hypocrisy killed me. So I thought, well, I'm going to cover a holistic overview of earrings later on. So, alright, Joad, mucho, alright, much love, much love. Sid is in the house, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. So, whilst people are tuning in, I'll read, and there's some heartbroken people online tonight. Oof, oof, oof. Only, you know, what's that, there's a line, it escapes me right now, that only the worst of kafirs will break the heart. And on that note, there's a weak or a fabricated hadith that Allah says, Ana indal munkasirati qulubuhum. Allah, I'm with those whose hearts have been broken. Chalo, dedicated to you people. Check this out. This is one of the reasons. Some people ask me, why do you like John Elia Sahib? Damat barakatuhum. Oh, and before I forget, we will be looking at tonight as well. I will be refuting this Maulvi Sahib from up north called Shahid Ali on this viewpoint that he seems to be pushing. That, I mean, it's a known position. It's not his position. He didn't invent this position, but he seems to be arguing in its defense passionately, and that is that women are only worth their blood money. So in cases, especially in cases of accidental death or things like this, they're only worth half the blood money of any man. So this is what Maulvi Sahib is pushing. Simply for being women. I mean, how absurd is that? So simply for having something dangling between your legs, you automatically are worth... Yaar, badi value hai. This thing carries a lot of value, I tell you. So we're going to be coming back to we're going to be coming back to Maulvi Saab, and I'm going to show how that is one of the most ridiculous, absurd statements that anybody can claim. It's blasphemous to claim that it's that it is the ruling from Allah and His Messenger. I will show that the hadith, the teachings of the Prophet, are contrary to that, and I will argue that, I mean, this Maulvi Saab isn't the first person to come up with this, but he's got a bit of passion in defending it, so fine, I'm taking it up with him. It doesn't matter how many men have said this. This is not the words of Allah nor His Messenger, and it's blasphemous to attribute it to them. But we'll come back to that. Whilst people are tuning in, somebody said men are the providers. Men are the providers, huh? Remember that this ruling, they say it's unrestricted for simply being male, they say, not for being, there's no meritocracy to it. So they're not saying any man who is a doctor, any man who is a surgeon, any man who is the breadwinner. Not that that would justify it, but still they're applying a caveat. They're not. They're saying simply being male. Biologically, this one. So we're going to look at that. So simply having that organ, that blessed organ, and not having the female anatomy, simply that's their claim, which is preposterous, people, ridiculous, has no place in Islam, this ruling. Chalo, right, so since I said I'll read something of John Elia Sahib, whilst other people are tuning in. Faraz, Maulana Ustad Faraz is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan. Right, so people, there's a very interesting poem I did like of John Elia. I mean, I like many of his poems, but let's take a look at this one, which is actually called Saza, punishment. Oof, oof, hi, Saza, people, Saza, punishment. Now, in this, you see, John Elia, he's a very dark kind of poet. He's something that he speaks kind of brutal truth to him. He doesn't hold back, and he can be very harsh. And this is one of those very harsh poems where it's none of that. He's just being ruthless, and it's in that rawness that one finds the true humanness, because we are ultimately human beings, people. So this was one I was reading the other day. I mean, I'd read it before and it was lying here. So he says, Har baar mere samne aati rahi ho tum, har baar tumse milke bicharta raha hu main. And he's speaking about that every time you've come in front of me and every time we continue to separate. Tum kaun ho ye khud bhi nahi janti ho tum. Main kaun hu ye khud bhi nahi janta hu. That neither of us have a true understanding of who we are. Tum mujhko jaan kar hi padi ho azab mein, aur is tarah khud apni saza ban gaya hu main. That by you becoming acquainted with me, you have ended up suffering. And he says, and that in itself became a punishment for me. Now, check this out. He says, and then he starts these particular very powerful lines. Tum jis zameen par ho main uska khuda nahi, pas sar basar aziyat o azar hi raho. He says that the land on which you live, I am not its God. If you are suffering, then remain suffering. Allah, the brutality, people. Bezar ho gayi ho bahut zindagi se tum. That I hear you've become frustrated and anxious. This frustration in life. जब बस में कुछ नहीं है तो बेजार ही रहो. Hi. John Elia Sahib. He says, when there's nothing else you can do about it, then remain in this frustration of yours. तुमको यहाँ के साया और पर्तव से क्या गरज? That what do you have to do with the shadow and the shade of this place? तुम अपने हक में बीच की दीवार ही रहो. And this is just a poetic line by stay in your realm. Now there's an interesting line here. He says, तुम खून थूकती हो ये सुनकर खुशी हुई. Now check this out. Would you ever get a poet saying something like this? तुम खून थूकती हो ये सुनकर खुशी हुई. इस रंग इस अदा में भी पुरकार ही रहो. That I hear that you have begun to cough blood. And he says that, then he says, by hearing that I've been happy. And there's a whole story to this with John Elia. He says, in this style, in this color, may you forever remain skillful. मैंने ये कब कहा था मोहब्बत में है नजात. मैंने ये कब कहा था वफादार ही रहो. Allah. Oof. He says, when did I say to you that love had salvation? When did I say to you remain loyal? This people is oof. I think it's incredibly tragic, his poetry. He has 1-2 lines. I'll finish them off of this poem of his. He says, जब मैं तुम्हें नशाते मोहब्बत न दे सका, गम में कभी सकून रफाकत न दे सका. When I couldn't give you this ecstasy of love, when I couldn't really be there for you in your time of sorrow, जब मेरे सब चरागे तमन्ना हवा के हैं, जब मेरे सारे ख्वाब किसी बेवफा के हैं. He says, when my own flames of desires have been, really they belong to the winds, meaning that I have no control over them. That he's trying to say how unloyal he is in that way. He says, फिर मुझको चाहने का तुम्हें कोई हक नहीं, तन्हा कराहने का तुम्हें कोई हक नहीं. Oof. He says that you have no right to then want me. You have no right to make me alone once again. Because he's trying to say, in this struggle throughout life of relationships and things like this, a person once again finds himself, according to John Elia, to be alone again. But he's an amazing poet, I tell you, honestly. You know, one of those days when you're feeling like, when you've got that kind of, I don't know, that kind of Kierkegaard spirit going on, that existential thoughts and that kind of, I don't know, that shadow, then you should read some of John Elia. It'll really touch some heartstrings. All right, people, let's move on. Some guy is saying, who is this clown? Well, Ahmad Ujdi is saying, Ujdi. If my name sounded like a Ouija board, I mean, it would take a hell of a lot of courage to call other people a clown. But still, more power to you, Ouija. More power to the Ouija. All right. Right, so now let me just take a look. Right, somebody said, oh, about John Elia. Yes, it is very, very kind of sad stuff, very powerful. Let's take a few questions, people. What's going on? What are we looking at? And some people said that, you know, I'm not doing enough rapid round questions, so let's do some rapid round. There will be an earring analysis shortly. Mufti Sahib, Mufti Uthman Maravia is in the house, people. All right, in La Casa. We've got Mufti Maravia. Bienvenidos. Right, so can you explain the reasoning on the people of the cave? I'm not sure. Baqir is asking what that is. I'm not sure what you mean by the reasoning of the people of the cave. I've answered this before, and I've got a clip on YouTube explaining that the Quran doesn't actually state that they were asleep for 309 years, for example. It states that they said that they were asleep for 309 years. And hence, the recitation of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu an and other people had in it وَقَالُوا, and that they said it was 309 years. But in our recitation, it said it's joined on to they said this and this and this, and some said this and some said this, and that they were asleep for 309 years. Allah follows up by saying He is more knowledgeable, kam labithu, how long they remained, but does not go on to explain or answer how long that was. So we don't actually have a verse of the Quran explaining how long they were out from Allah. We only have the verse saying that they claimed that they were asleep for 309 years. And they can claim anything they like. It's as simple as that, people. Es muy fácil. Right, what's going on? I have a question. How does Mufti feel about the boycott of Makkah? Boycott of Makkah? What does that mean? Boycott of Makkah. Where is the cave? The cave is in modern day Jordan. These people, by the way, and al-fitya that are mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, if we open this up to, right, I'll tell you something quite interesting about this. Right. And that verse, by the way, just to let you know, let me just find it here. Oh, here it is. And this in Surah Al-Kahf, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا. Did you feel that the people of the cave were Raqim? And Raqim is one of the old names for Petra. So a lot of people in the past weren't too sure what Raqim was, because Petra for many years had, because the way it's located in the desert, it had disappeared. Because once it became abandoned, it wasn't something that was easily signposted, and then it just kind of disappeared to the world, and only a few hundred years ago was rediscovered. So at that time, when a lot of the Mufassirin were writing commentaries on the Quran, they weren't sure what this Raqim meant. So many of them thought maybe this was the name of the dog. Some people said maybe this was Raqim meant the Arabic word Raqim of scripture, as in inscription, sorry. So they thought maybe there was an inscription on some wall or something. But Raqim is one of the classical names, so anthropological research has demonstrated through multiple non-Islamic sources, but they've demonstrated through archaeological findings that one of the names of Petra, it had many names, but one of it was Raqim, named after, some people say, one of the kings, or kind of took that name, and hence it was named after him. So this Surah Al-Kahf does indicates to the people of Petra as well, that Am hasibta anna ashab al-kahfi wal-raqim, and the people of Raqim, did you feel that they kanu min ayatina ajaba, that they were a strange an interesting sign of our signs, like that we had gifted them these wonderful abilities. So that's an amazing. And then what I'd mentioned earlier on about this verse that you have, وَلَبِثُوا فِي كَهْفِهِمْ ثَلَاثَمِائَةِ سِنِينٍ وَازْدَادُوا تِسْعًا, that they remained in their cave for, as it mentions, 309 years. قُلِ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا لَبِثُوا. This is the objection to it. That tell them that Allah is more knowledgeable about how long they actually remained, because this is attached to the verses before it. سَيَقُولُونَ ثَلَاثَةٌ رَابِعُهُمْ كَلْبُهُم. They will say that they were 3 and the 4th was the dog, or they will say there were this many, 5 and the 6th was the dog, and they will say this, and they will say, or they said that they remained asleep for 309 years, but Allah is more knowledgeable of how long they actually were asleep. So I mean, I hope that sheds some light. Assam is in the house, people. Ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Sorry, I didn't get... There was a question just a little while back about boycotting Makkah. I'm not sure what that was. Ilhan Omar called for a boycott of Hajj because of Saudi's actions in Yemen. Oh, right. As in boycotting Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I think that would be an interesting... I don't know if it would work really, because I think there's so many Muslims that would still go, because Saudi every year has to place a restriction on how many Muslims come to the Hajj. So I don't think they would suffer, unfortunately, from the boycott. Otherwise, if it is effective, then I would support it, because it's amazing how Saudi has this ability to just dictate the Islamic terms and yet it has no problem in bombarding Yemen or things like this, or just doing... Okay, MBS, who's notorious on human rights, but he has given some freedoms to women. And of course, Nicki Minaj with her recent concert, which I'm just confused, you see, because I wanted to sign up for that to attend, but I wasn't sure where I need to tie the ihram from. Should I wear it from Birmingham going out, or should I... Should we just turn up with the lower part of the ihram? Just the sarong? So... Right, so I mean, yeah, so I even though MBS is doing certain things which I do agree with, I actually like the fact that he's giving a lot more rights to women and stuff like this, but he is notorious on human rights, and Saudi is the major exporter of things like radical thought, or radically sympathized thought. So the thought that of many Muslims who are sympathetic to radicals stems from the funding from Saudi kind of organizations. And so I'm not sure, MBS said he was going to curb that in and make sure he controls this kind of export of Wahhabism and stuff like this. I don't know if that's happening, but I haven't been following it that closely, but it would be interesting. Imam Mark is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan, Shaykhana. Any joke on Minaj? That's what I'm saying. I mean, the manhaj. They were, you know, they were probably confused. It's like they said, let's hold a conference. We need somebody who's on the manhaj. And it was probably a communication error. So somebody thought, oh, Minaj, Nicki Minaj, okay, no problem. This one, no problem. So there you go. Before you know it, it was just a communication error. They wanted somebody on the minhaj, The haqq. We want on the haqq, people on the haqq. So, Hajj today is Hajj is ridiculously priced. I don't know how so many people do afford it though. People go on luxurious packages. I'm not condemning the luxury that people take, but I'm just saying that I do feel that Hajj is massively it's a business. If we're going to be honest, Hajj is a business. So is Umrah, but Hajj especially. And it's a lucrative one. So I think many reforms need to be made. To do with Hajj, to do with other things. Saudi doesn't really care about anything. That's it. It's just like, I don't give a damn. And they need to make certain reforms. I'm so disappointed that they don't allow any archaeological support to help Muslims with the archaeology of Islam. Because today many people, many non-Muslims have questioned the authenticity of Islam, saying that there is no archaeological findings, we can't do this, we can't do that. Why is Saudi not allowing them, or allowing, they can use Muslims, but archaeological findings? I'm disappointed in that. I'm seriously disappointed. It's like, this one not nice, my friend. Many things like on Eid al Adha, the sacrifices that take place in Makkah for the Hajj. This is today useless. It is honestly, this, I can't believe that if the Prophet was alive today, he would have allowed that. I seriously don't believe that the Prophet ﷺ would have allowed it if he was alive today. Because today these animals are, today it's no longer symbolic, they're just killing so many. And you have to remember that the Prophet, you see, there was a time, there was a hadith when the Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke about the udhiyah, about the sacrifice, and it was about a sacrifice for each, for example, sacrificing. But then you find another hadith where the Prophet is sacrificing on behalf of the entire household now. So it seems to have gone that as there's strength, as more and more people are doing it, we don't need that many things sacrificed. So the Prophet's gone from every individual duty to just now one per household. And now that in places like Hajj where there's millions of people, you don't need 1 million sacrifices, or you don't need hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sacrifices. It's enough to upscale it. That ijtihad would now say, the way the Prophet said, you know, one per household is now sufficient. And in fact, in one hadith, the Prophet said, I do it on behalf of this ummah. I mean, is this not our Prophet? So now the ijtihad ought to be that one on behalf of a certain group, an entire, so it's supposed to, there can be symbolism of sacrificing animals, but not to that extent that it's just useless and wasted. You know, it's waste of animal life, it's a waste of meat, it's a waste. I know they can them and ship them off to certain countries if they can, and a lot of it is just wasted. So this kind of stuff isn't, or they should come up with a different alternative, you know. But the point is that this today needs revisiting, okay. And you see in the hadith, the Prophet did revisit it, and he changed the ruling from an individual to a household. And that's the Maliki madhab. The school of Medina was one sacrifice for the entire household was sufficient. You don't need to all be doing a sacrifice. So today, in this day and age, when Muslims are so many and so many people are sacrificed, they need to step up the ijtihad. And they need to say, well, you know, now one per entire, like a clan. Not just, because there's so many people doing it. We don't need that. You know, Allah is not thirsty for these animals to be sacrificed. Allah is not in need of these animals to be sacrificed. So I'm not against the sacrifice altogether as a symbolism, but I feel that we've forgotten what it was about. It was about symbolism, and today it's just gone into mass slaughter. And it was never like that in the time of the Prophet. And I do feel, in my heart of hearts, that if the Prophet was alive today, he would never have condoned it. So that's my understanding on the matter. Asnabul Ashraf. I'm not sure. Asnabul Ashraf? What is Asnabul Ashraf? Alright, let's take some rapid questions, people. Then we'll look at some of the topics for tonight, which do include, some of the key topics are a holistic overview of men, can they wear earrings? And the other is this ruling on blood money, and the erroneous, the ridiculous, kind of absurd statement that women are only worth half the value of men. Frobbery is asking, are there three or five salahs in the Quran? You see, the Quran does not break down into detail, people, the prayers. It does not break down. I don't even really buy the argument that the Quran was trying to say there's 3 salahs or 5. I personally feel the Quran was not addressing that. And I really like, there's the, a kind of, the primordial source, the prototype source, or the proto-sunnah source theory or hypothesis, as pushed forward, as stated by Mufti Maraviya Saab, who is on our live today. And I think it's an amazing hypothesis that we as Muslims should work on. And that is that if you look at the great major splits within Islam that have still lived on till today, so you have the main body of Muslims, which identify today as Sunni. You have the Shia, who have lived on till today, and I mean regardless of the sub-denominations. And you have the Khawarij, who have lived on as well. The Khawarij today are the Ibadiyya, so they've lived on as well. Now, all three sects, the initial, where they began, they were not at harmony at all with each other. In fact, they were at each other's throats. So the fact that where they seem to have agreed on all these things, it demonstrates that they were all taking from a particular source that precedes these books of hadith and things like this. That this proto-sunnah of the Prophet, this proto kind of this source, that they were all equally tapping into that very early living tradition. Now, the fact that the Shia believe that there's 5 prayers, whether they combine 2 or not, but they believe there's 5 salah. The Ibadiyya believe there's 5 salah. The Sunnis believe there's 5 salah. This goes to demonstrate, in my understanding, irrefutably, that there must have been some very clear proto source that was part of the early living tradition in early Islam, that all Muslims seem to have accepted that there were 5 salah. Whether you pray 2 combined or not, but they are separate salah. The Shia do not say that there are only 3 salahs in a day. They state them as 5, but they combine. And even Sunni scholars allow combination of prayers. So it's not something unique to the Shia or the Sunnis. So that's what I feel. If someone said they are struggling with depression caused by self-esteem, what advice would you give them from an Islamic perspective? Is low self-esteem a lack of trust in Allah? Tariq, I was watching an interview with Juan Cole where he says that the Prophet was probably not literate. His job before his prophethood would have... right, okay, let's take a look at those two questions. First question, or the question by Hina, I've answered this before on several occasions, that the Prophet ﷺ, could he read and write? Now, in my understanding, I feel that the Prophet could read and write, but not, it wasn't a common thing. It wasn't something that they did, that people generally were doing so much. If we look at the historical records, it appears that the Arabs of North Arabia, of the Hijaz, seem to be moving away from the script of the South Arabian kingdoms like Himyar. In the lifetime of the Prophet, they seem to be moving towards the northern Arabs, the Middle Eastern Arabs, the Nabatean kingdoms, their script. So, which is influenced by Hira and the Lakhmin and the Manadhira and those people. So you see some of the people from Makkah, Bishr ibn Abdul Malik and others who travel to Hira, come back and teach people this new script called Jazm, which is the Arabic that we write in today. So this Arabic today is not actually the Arabic of the ancient Arabs. The Arabic of the ancient Arabs was Himyari, or Al-Khatt al-Musnad, and that was, it looked a bit like hieroglyphics. It kind of had shapes and triangles and all this kind of stuff. So, and it's found in archaeological findings, so from way before Islam, you find it especially in southern Arabia. So the transition from Khatt al-Musnad to Khatt al-Jazm, or al-Himyari, to the kind of Ambat, the Nabatean script, is something that's happening in the lifetime of the Prophet. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in my understanding, pushes also, or is part of that transition, as in he agrees with it. He seems to agree with it, in my understanding, in making that. And I think there may have been something in the background about identitarian kind of shift taking place as well, sociologically. So there seems to be, because the kingdoms up north, it seems that the Hijazi Arabs wanted to now more identify with the northern kingdoms of the Lakhmiyin and the Ghassaniyin, the Ghassanid and the Lakhmid dynasties, which were protectorates of the Persian and Byzantine empires, as opposed to the South Arabian, the kind of Aksumite kingdoms of the ancient Arabs, of Himyar and these kind of people. There seems to be an identity shift taking place. And so, could the Prophet read and write? I believe he could. Many of the Malikiya, the great, those who adhere to the school of Medina, like Abul Walid al-Baji, the great Muslim legend, Maliki scholar from Spain, he was of this position, and he wrote a book which is in print today called Tahqiq al-Madhab fi anna al-Nabiyya qad katab, that the tahqiq, the kind of precision of the madhab, or the way, is that the Prophet could write. That was his book. It is available today online and in some of the bookstores. Now, he argues in this book that the Prophet could write, and he uses evidences for it from places like the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, and then he pointed, because a lot of Sunnis, or this is not a Sunni, non-Sunni issue, by the way, but people today unfortunately try and make it like that. But the people like Abul Walid al-Baji were Sunni scholars. They were not from any other group. They were Sunni Maliki scholars. So, but a lot of ulama said, oh, he here was referring to Ali radiallahu anh, but most likely was referring to the Prophet. I think so as well. That he points out and kind of erases the word. Now, also, Baji uses the evidence of the hadith that the Prophet says in a vision. He says, oh, I saw the gates of hell and the gates of heaven, and on the gates such and such was written. And he says, for the Prophet to tell you what was written, he says in the dream that I saw that this was written on this. So it meant he could read. And he uses these kind of evidences. And Qadi Iyad seems very sympathetic to his position in Tartib al-Madarik. So if you read Tartib al-Madarik, Qadi Iyad seems to kind of support what Baji is saying, and he says that people misunderstood Baji. So right now, I'm not sure what's going on here. Hisham Wadi. Hisham Wadi is saying, people be warned, this guy is a misleader. Well, you tried to warn him, Hisham. But you know what kind of way you fell short was, I suppose the surname is the same thing. Wadi is what I think is excreted after urine, according to some people, and it breaks the wudu. So that's what kind of... See, people are struggling to take you seriously with that surname, so you got to kind of change it. Nevertheless, so I do agree. My personal understanding is that the Prophet could write, but he wasn't somebody that generally wrote a lot. A lot of the Arabs didn't. They had an oral tradition. They were people of an oral tradition. So that's that question. The other question on depression from Elizabeth is that, look, having low self-esteem or suffering from depression has nothing to do with Iman. Has nothing to do with Iman. Any person saying that depression is because of your lack of faith in Allah is a shaitan. Okay, any person who says that is the devil incarnate. I'm telling you, they are doing the greatest disservice to Allah and His Messenger. That it is ridiculous to claim that your depression that people may be going through is somehow linked to a lack of faith in God. That's stupid. These people have no idea of mental health. They have no idea how the brain works. They don't understand things like neurotransmitters. They don't understand things like serotonin, its levels, the uptake. They don't understand this stuff. These people are they're speaking about physiological matters as though it's just something to do with you must clearly not believe in God. That's stupid. That's ridiculous. That's as dumb as saying, if you have a headache, then you can't be a Muslim. It's as dumb as that statement. So it's absurd. It's nothing to do with your faith. Okay, so please just take that into, first of all, I need to clear that. I cannot stress that enough, because I see some of these I don't even know what to call them, but some of these so-called preachers saying things like this, and it's so disappointing. You got depression, your Iman. I don't know about their Iman lacking, but your intellect is definitely lacking. So yeah, it's nothing to do with that. However, depression, what advice would I give for depression? I would say, first of all, speak to your local GP, your local doctor, see what's going on, try to get a scan, try to get some kind of like some medical feedback. Is there a chemical imbalance? Is there something? Some people could naturally have issues with serotonin, or they kind of just the kind of things going on, the hormonal aspect of their body could be at an imbalance, cortisol levels and other things. So it's good to get a kind of checkup to see, well, what's going on. Maybe there's some kind of imbalance that can then be stabilized. In addition to that, I would say that depression can be caused by many things. One is an isolated event-based depression. So, for example, something has happened. In those cases, usually time will heal things. Like for example, somebody's died, and now their death has caused somebody to go into depression. These are like isolated scenarios where the depression has a clear kind of source There's an etiology to the whole thing. Now, in those situations, hopefully time will heal, inshallah, the people. On some occasions, people don't have a particular isolated cause. They don't know why they're depressed. Like nothing's actually happened. They just seem to have gone into depression. This can happen. First of all, being depressed at some level, like just feeling sad, for example, is normal. Just feeling sad on some occasions. So sometimes, just the way you'll feel really happy sometimes, there may be occasions where you just feel really sad, you feel down. That's normal, so long as it does not become chronic or kind of sustained over a long period of time. So if somebody felt sad on some evening or some day, that can be quite normal, and it can even be healthy. It's not something which you need to worry about. The problem is if you can't shake that feeling off at all. I don't mean just in that evening or those few hours. I mean it's been a week and you're still sad. It's been 2 weeks and you're still sad. There's something definitely going on here. This is not just a normal episode of feeling down. I would say in addition to medicinal assistance or medical assistance, there's many things that somebody can do. I would advise that one, you need to preoccupy the mind. Okay, you need to. It's going to be difficult because once a person goes into depression, they lose things like their appetite. They lose the desire to eat food. They lose the desire to want to do things. They have an apathy, like they don't want to learn, they don't want to watch something fun, they don't want to chill out. But here they have to kind of force themselves to do these things. So I would advise that you do, even if it means forcing yourself, but you have to keep the mind active. You have to try. If you're into learning something, learn it. Read about something. Watch something. That's something I would say it's very important to keep the mind active. 2, it's very important to make sure you have some hobbies. It's really important. If not, take up some hobbies. They could be anything. It could be learning a language, to learning poetry, to gardening, to reading about things, to whatever. Or that, for example, it could be for somebody they take up a study of something, but you take up something. 3, I would really, and I can't stress this enough, is you must socialize with friends. You must force yourself to go visit some friends. The kind of friends who are usually very jolly or cheerful, or go visit them. Chill out, hang out, have a laugh. Because I can't stress this enough, that you seriously will change your kind of mindset. Being around people that where you can just have an uncontrollable kind of laugh, and where they will. So I would really advise these things. Somebody said a good joint will help. I believe that. I don't smoke myself, but statistics do say that where it's legal, medical marijuana may be of some help. Allahu A'lam. But my point is that it's so important to go and socialize, be with friends. It really can help. And other things too. I mean, maybe, I don't know, spending some quality time. That always should help. Right, so cool. Let's move on, people. Did the Prophet issue the punishment of Rajam after the revelation of Surah Noor? No, he did not. Rajam, I've got a clip, people, on the trajectory hermeneutics, in which, and I've got a separate clip on, do the hudud change with time? And yes, they do. The answer, please do watch it. It's in much detail there. The Prophet ﷺ did not invent Rajam. Okay. The hadith seem to show that he just went with the ruling of the Jewish people for the Jewish people. So when they came to him and said, we'd like you to kind of arbitrate and so he said, okay, I'll do it by your law. And according to their law, that was the punishment. This was then sustained for a short period of time. And this was something that was known of the time people did it. But this changed with the verse of the Quran. And the verse of the Quran speaks about in the time the Arabs had this lashing as a punishment. And in some hadith about sending somebody, forced migration, where you'd send somebody away. Now, the verse of the Quran seems to shift it to that, because it doesn't make any sense about Rajam. Because if you said it was Rajam that the Quran was ordaining, the Quran never mentions Rajam. Secondly, the Quran mentions that, okay, for servants and slaves, the punishment was half. That's in the Quran. That, you know, upon the kind of the fatayat, the imat, the slaves, there's nisfum min al adhab, that they have half of the punishment. How can you do half a stoning? It makes no sense. So, but yes, some people seem to have continued that way of thinking. But then centuries ago, almost 600 years ago, the great Maliki legend, you have Abu al-Qasim al-Burzuli, who was the Shaykh al-Islam of his time. He gave the ruling that these kind of rulings, hudud, have changed. And he was a judge of his era. He was a great scholar. He changed them into financial penalties. And many of the Malikiya after him remained upon that understanding. And then some people weren't. And then later on, whatever happened. But that was for several generations. So this is, the Sharia is always linked to objectives, maqasid. Okay? Right, okay. Now, what's going on? Skunk, Imran Ali is saying skunk cannabis is not natural and can contribute to... I've never said, look, I am clearly against drugs. I do not do drugs myself. I am against drugs. But I have in the past been asked about matters of things like marijuana, cannabis. Is this a religious issue? And I've said that, look, these are more issues of legality as opposed to theology. That I don't feel Islam would prohibit the use of the natural plant. But people and legal systems and things like that do, and they vary throughout the world. So I was asked about medical marijuana. That is not the same thing as what is sold on the streets, because a lot of what is sold on the streets is often laced with more powerful drugs to create a more compelling addiction, to have the kind of punters constantly returning. So, and I'm clearly, and I said this time and time again, the gang or the drug dealing culture is haram. Drug dealers and what they do and the world that they help sustain is a haram, forbidden and notorious world, and I utterly condemn that. But if we were to differentiate and just speak about medical marijuana, or marijuana where it's sold in certain shops and cafes, like in some parts of the world, some American states, or where in the Netherlands it's sold, would this be haram? Or there's been some discussion in the UK to legalize marijuana. If it was sold in a cafe, not laced with other powerful, would it be haram? And I've said that I don't believe it would be haram. Many ulama would disagree with me. I accept that, but I don't believe it would be haram. That's the discussion. Please do not conflate the matters. I've never ever supported, and never will I support. I condemn the kind of drug dealing culture, the world of drug dealing, and in fact, I applauded Sheikh Asrar, my beloved Sheikh Asrar, who I obviously disagree with on so many things, but he recently gave a statement, it was on Facebook, stating that Muslim imams should refuse to lead the janazah of drug dealers. And I actually support that. I feel that, well done. After so long I've heard Sheikh Asrar saying something, you know, I applaud him for saying something that actually makes a lot of sense for this day and age. So, just to be clear on that. Right. Somebody, Rahma, said it's legal in the country I live in, Canada. Yeah, I mean, and that's a different discussion, people. Because the issue is that it's, it's a plant, I guess. Mother Nature. God, how can we rebel against Mother Nature? Right. All right. Well, people, what else is going on? Let's look at some of the questions. Muhammad Mahfouz, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Somebody said the story of Uzair. I've answered that before on some other occasion. I'll go through it another time in much more detail. Mike Tyson opened a ranch. Okay. Purple Haze is off. People are using this to plug their favorite. Yeah, Elizabeth said it's the intent behind the usage that matters, and I totally agree with that. Danielle has asked, what about DMT? I actually feel that DMT ought to be, I support DMT. I think that DMT ought to be more capitalized upon and embarked upon by people for a spiritual experience. I feel there's nothing to state that DMT and these kind of things like mushrooms, psilocybin, or these kind of things would be haram. The results, I attended one of the senior professor on this matter. I attended his lecture on psychedelics, and the research demonstrated, and he's conducted years and years of research. David Luke, he has a book called Other Worlds, which I did purchase, and I spoke to him personally as well. After the lecture, we had a chat at the bar. Who said that? Right, not. Right, so I spoke to him as well personally, asked him a lot of these questions. What do you have to say about these things? And he's personally experienced. He's spoken to a lot of people. They've conducted research for many years. There's not been a single death that's ever been linked to DMT. There's been no addiction. There's no evidence of any addiction that is caused by DMT. There's no persisting side effects that have been demonstrated through any research. This is psychological and actual medical research. This is not me just stating this. If anything, it seems to expand a human's consciousness and make people better people. In fact, most people who took psilocybin, like mushrooms and things like this, became very peaceful people. They became people who were more in touch with nature. The majority of them took up gardening. They did things like this. And it's amazing that they lost a fear of death. They became very lovey-dovey kind of people throughout. I mean, through longitudinal research. This is not just... So I think, if anything, these things... Sure, why not? Let me just have... On that note... Right, so... Have I emailed Dan Gibson myself? I haven't emailed Dan Gibson. I have watched a lot of his kind of his series, and I find it interesting. Dan Gibson has been one of the he's at the forefront of this campaign that that the Muslims have got Mecca wrong. That Mecca was in Petra. I'm not convinced by his research, although I give it to him. I feel that he has done some amazing research, though. I am really genuinely impressed by some of these people who, I mean, I don't know if impressed is the right word, but I am wowed by their commitment. The people who are not Muslim, but they will spend decades of their lives to an issue of Islam. And I feel that we as Muslims ought to welcome that, even if it challenges our notions. Because if we are confident and secure in what we believe, then we ought to be able to stand the test of time and the test of critiques, and critics. So I feel that his evidence is very interesting. I have been going through his book Early Qiblas in Islam, and I haven't been through his other ones yet on geography in the Quran, but I've been through a lot of his series of archaeology and Islam. It's very fascinating, and some of it has got me, and I'm still researching some of the things. It's ongoing, but I'm not convinced. And I feel that he has this one interview where he has a mathematician that speaks about the standard deviation, and because what Dan Gibson has done in essence is he's gone to 60 of the most ancient, allegedly ancient masjids in the world that have some foundations that he can trace, and he feels the Qibla points more towards Petra than it does to Mecca. The foundations, not the current building. So the current building will point towards Makkah, but the foundations allegedly point towards Petra. Now, you see, the issue with this is that doesn't stand true in all the things. So North Africa clearly doesn't. It doesn't point to Makkah nor Petra. It seems to point south. Andalusia, Muslim Spain, seems to point south. He does come up with a theory to explain that, not convincing at all. Many places that are far off, you see, because Petra and Makkah are still the east. I mean, Petra is in modern-day Jordan. So it's very... Muslims were never trying to hit the Kaaba spot on. He then does some interesting research and shows how closer are they to Makkah than they are to Petra. And it's true, in many of the masjids he shows, they are closer to Petra than they are to Makkah. But in many others, they're not. And he doesn't take that into consideration. I mean, he does disclose it, but he doesn't take it into consideration as much. He then has, on one of his interviews, he has a statistician that is then showing the statistics and the standard deviation of these Qibla points, and he does a diagram where if there were 10 points and you had to point, the fact that these masjids are pointing towards Petra, the probability of them, like he brings it down to something like 1 billion or something ridiculous. Because if you've got 10 points, but every time it keeps pointing towards this one more than that, then the statistics is to the power of 10 and whatever. Now, it's all mathematics, and I'm not a kind of mathematician like that. But I could clearly see what was a fallacy in his reasoning, and that was that he begins this equation with 10 points, saying that if you had to point to 10 directions and you kept getting this one. But when it comes to Petra and Makkah, you're just talking about 2 places. There ain't 10. There is no 10 Qiblas. There's simply Makkah, as Muslims claim, or Petra, as these people are claiming that Muslims once believed in Petra. Now, that's it. So there isn't this, and this equation is a fallacy in anybody who watches that can see that. So the other thing to refute, which is compelling, is that proto-source hypothesis. That how can it be that the Shia, the Sunnah, the Sunni, mainstream Muslims, and the Khawarij all agreed upon the Kaaba? They would never have agreed. I mean, the Shia would have definitely, or the Khawarij would have used that as evidence against the mainstream of Muslims, like they did in many other things. Why would they hold back on Petra? So I feel that said, I do find many of the things they're saying very interesting. Like, I don't think what Dan Gibson or these people are saying, some of the things that they're saying, like Patricia Crone and these people, is nonsense. I feel it's very compelling, and it's made me, on certain matters, reevaluate my own narrative. And I feel that Islam, the history is how it was, but the nuances may not have been what we thought they were. I do agree with that after, a lot of this, since I've been researching this Islam revisionist, what the Orientalists, what they're saying, I feel that on some things they do have a point. They're not actually, You know, like we have this thing that they're just totally blind. They're not. They actually make a compelling argument on, not necessarily the Qibla thing, on other matters. So they do. They spend so much years of their life, like, what were the Quraysh, what did they used to trade in? What were these journeys? Where were these journeys to? Rihlat al-Shita'i was-Sayf. Where did they used to go? What do the Greek records demonstrate? These people have looked into all of these. They're not just, just sitting there chatting nonsense. And I feel that Muslims shouldn't just dismiss them so easily. We should look into it. So yeah, I hope that helps. مطيع الرحمن says هل قرأت الكتاب نواظر الأيك في معرفة النيك للسيوطي which people is a book on the on the knowledge. It's a book on sexology by Imam Suyuti. Imam Suyuti had a strange, like in some things he he has this one section in one of his books, and I think it may have been published as a separate kind of article, like a small booklet on its own, about all the different names of a penis. You're Suyuti. Imam Suyuti, I swear. He has this, and he says, Imam Suyuti, when he's commenting on Imam Ghazali's quote on sex, so there's this quote where Imam Ghazali says that the pleasures of paradise are hidden from this world, like we can't relate to them, but the closest pleasure to the pleasures of paradise is an orgasm. I totally, I cannot object to Imam Ghazali on that point. As much as I can disagree with Imam Ghazali on many other things, but I'll say, Vah Guru. And Imam Suyuti comments, he brings that quote of Ghazali, and then he brings this quote saying that the pleasures of this world can be summarized into two. He says, one is riding a horse. You've guessed it, people. See, you nutty. All of you watching this, you haramis. So this, he says, one is horse riding and the other is sex. So these are the two greatest pleasures of this world. And Suyuti comments by saying, وَهُوَ الصَّحِيحِ. And he says, and that is correct. Suyuti. Deep down, these people, I swear, if I had an opportunity to be in a gathering with these people, I would have their darkest secrets open before me within an hour. I don't know, I have this kind of, I don't know if I should call it a gift or a curse, that when people are around me, they open up their darkest secrets, kind of, they open them up in front of me. I have this kind of Lucifer effect on people. So, somebody said, I get horse riding, but sex? Come on. I did say once that you could... Could you further, Occam's razor, simplify it by the term... Shall we just put a full stop at riding? That's the... Okay, but since this is live and unrestricted, right, the Pandora's box. Right, Sam Ali said, I never got the joke about horse riding. Don't worry about it, my friend. Don't worry. Pious, this brother is a pious brother amongst us. We need hope, people. We need hope. And these people give us hope. There's a few guys that we know, like, some of my close friends, we always have this kind of joke. There's a few guys we know that we say, wow, that guy is what gives us hope in humanity for men. And there's only like two that I know. I don't know any other men that I can be like, There's just two guys I know that we often use as an example we say that guy is a hope for humanity, that there are some men, some decent men that still exist. Otherwise, the rest of us, god damn. Mushtaq says, Salam wa alaikum as-salam. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum. People, shall we take a look at this earring? Shall we take a look at that? What say you, folks? What say you? Earrings, people, earrings. So, let me just open this up. Okay, here it is. Right, now, Bismillah, folks. The ruling on earrings. The admin just commented, the type of guy that you'd want your daughter to marry. Yeah, that's those one or two guys that we only ever know. We think, wow, there need to be more men like that, yeah, in this world. Oh, well, anyway, let admin stop distracting me. Right, let's focus, people. Bismillah. Right, so earrings. What is the ruling? Can men wear earrings? Can men wear earrings according to Islam? Now, the answer is clearly yes, they can wear earrings. But more than just going through a simple ruling, I'd like to give a holistic overview. Okay, then coming back to the ruling, and I'd like to focus on certain ahkam, certain traditions that have been narrated, some of the practices of the Salaf and things like this. Right, so first of all, there seems to be this thing that people feel that an earring is effeminate, that they feel that this maybe only homosexuals would wear earrings, or people trying to act like women somehow are trying to wear. So somebody commented on one of my photos saying that, I don't understand the earring because it's only something women that you'd identify women with. So there seems to be this conception, this misconception out there that women only wear earrings. So I'm going to zoom out slightly and then we'll zoom back in, people, okay? So I'm going to go over a brief overview, give us a backdrop of earrings. Now, for thousands of years, those of us for people who do not know, for thousands of years, human beings have used jewelry. Okay, thousands and thousands of years, at least from documentation that and it's not just documents, it's inscriptions, it's rock art, things like this. We can see that human beings, from at least documented something like up to anything between 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, were adorning themselves with jewelry. We see many civilizations. Okay, so you've got several kind of dynasties. If we go as far back as almost 4,500 years ago, the kingdoms of Assyria, so with its capital Assur, which is probably modern day Nineveh, you see kingdoms like that the men would often wear earrings, especially to denote high status. And many of whether they were aristocrats or people of any kind of nobility within the Assyrian Empire, which is the modern day Middle East, they would wear earrings. It's known from their clay tablets when they spoke about things, when they gave descriptions. We still have that in the clay tablets. We have, if you look at places like Egypt, for example, the Egyptian civilizations, in their papyri that has survived from thousands of years, going back 4,000 years, if not more, it described their prominent people, the men, as all wearing earrings. And the prominent men, it described them as wearing earrings. If not all, but many amongst them. About the Egyptian civilization, even many of the great excavations of mummies, of mummified figures that once unwrapped, they found their ears to be, the men, they found their ears to be pierced. So you have these kind of things. If you look at the biblical sources from the time of Moses, okay, the story, the famous story, which is mentioned in the Bible, in the Quran as well, about when Moses when he went away, the people, the Israelites, asked Harun to help them make a god to get gold, and the Quran refers to the story as well, that he made this kind of that they made this kind of this calf, this kind of cow, golden cow, lahuz, that it had a kind of sound to it. So, and they started worshipping this, and then when Moses comes back, he's very upset. You know, alqa al-alwaha ghadbana, that he was angry, and he threw the kind of the slates that he had. These, but the point in the Bible, it mentions Harun, that Aaron, when he's asked to make a cow, a golden cow for them, he says to them that, go bring me the gold, and he mentions, it's in the Bible, bring me the earrings from your, he says, from your boys, the earrings. And he asks for the girls as well, but he asks for the boys' earrings. So you see that even thousands of years ago, the Israelites, they had this practice. You see the Achaemenid Empire, the Persian Empire that existed in the Middle East, that began with Cyrus I and it ends with Darius III. You see in their kingdom, their Persepolis, one of the main kind of capitals, which is probably north of or around modern day Shiraz, many of the paintings of their soldiers that have survived showed that the soldiers, the men, would wear earrings. Okay, so you've got this kind of tradition. It is true that the Romans didn't wear earrings generally. They, in fact, described it as an Eastern thing, an Oriental thing. And one of the reasons that they never wore them was because a lot of the slaves wore earrings, the men. So they saw it as a lowly thing and an Eastern thing. And perhaps this was partly due to their rivalry with the Persians, the Achaemenid and the other Sassanid kind of empires. But the Persians definitely did wear earrings. If you look to the east, like India, some of the greatest ruling dynasties, the Tamil dynasties, like the Chola dynasty, which was one of the longest empires, ruling empires in India ever, centuries and centuries on end, a lot of their ancient scriptures and a lot of their statues and drawings and whatever they have depict the men always, especially the kings and other people, always wearing earrings. If you move to Europe, people, this is to give us a backdrop, and then we'll zoom back in. Many people in ancient Europe did wear, men, I'm speaking about men specifically, they wore earrings. In fact, you had, it was seen as a kind of class thing. So the poor people, the peasants, they usually wore copper earrings. The nobility and the businessmen, merchants, wore kind of precious metals like gold and silver. And the kings usually wore earrings out of rubies or emeralds and things like this. So this seems to be there. If you look at places like the ancient Rus dynasties, the ancient Russian dynasties, and you look at, they had Cossack atamans, who were their kind of military leaders. They often marked their children with earrings. So if a boy was the only child, the boy would wear a right earring. He would wear an earring in the right. And where they had many children, many boys, the last of the men would always wear an earring in their left. So you see things like that. In other parts of Europe, the church, especially as the church began to get more prominent, the church prohibited men from wearing earrings. Now, so you see the church influence. It starts to say that no, these things should be restricted to women, and the church starts to pass out rulings. However, many men still, especially those who defied authority often still wore earrings. Hence, pirates throughout history usually wore earrings, almost as an act of defiance and to kind of show that thing. And many people who challenged the authority sometimes of the church historically wore earrings. So you see that because to show this kind of this self authority in a way. You have other ancient kingdoms like the native Indians, them wearing earrings. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all of this is to give a backdrop that some people seem to think that people never wore earrings, men never wore earrings, and this is a very recent phenomenon. Began since the hippies and so on, and now it's just recent. This has been something that has existed for thousands and thousands of years, often worn by men, usually men of nobility or soldiers. This was often a thing. Sailors who traveled around the world often wore earrings as a sign to show that they traveled around the world. This is throughout huge parts of history. Diverse societies. This was never seen generally as a thing exclusive to women. Now, I'm just giving us a backdrop. Now I'm going to kind of zoom back into the Islamic sentiment. In the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, men wore earrings. You will see that in the society in which the Prophet lived, boys, especially young boys, wore earrings. And you will see that this trend continues for at least during the time of the Salaf. That during the Sahaba, the Tabi'een and the Atba'u Tabi'een, this trend seems to carry on, that the boys often wore earring, and many people considered it sunnah for the boy to wear an earring. Now you see, when they became men, many of them may have removed the earrings, and some of them may have kept it. But the fact that they wore earrings as boys was definitely a widespread phenomenon during the era of the Salaf. Now, later on, as the centuries progressed, it is true that Muslim culture, by and large, not all, especially within the mainstream, and I'll come back to this in a moment, that especially a lot of the so-called Sunni orthodoxy, the clergy, started to stamp down on these things and prohibit it, just like the Christian Church of Europe. And they may have been influenced by the Christian Church of influence in doing this. And hence you see the Shia refused on this point of the Sunnis. So the Shia seem to have kept it alive in their tradition right through up until today. So now we're going to come back now to some of the sources. So you will find a hadith which is transmitted by Ibn Abbas radiallahu an, who states that sab'atun min as-sunnah, and this is in the Mu'jam al-Awsat of Tabrani, and it's been declared by several scholars, including the Ra'is al-Jam'iyyat al-Shar'iyyah of Al-Azhar as-Sahih. Ibn Abbas says seven are from the Sunnah. For the boy, he says fis sabi, regarding the boy, Yawm as-Sabi', on the 7th day, as a ceremony he will formally be named. So he goes through all of these things, that he will be circumcised, and he's talking about the boy. And it goes on to mention that وَتُثْقَبْ أُذْنُهُ, and his ear will be pierced. Okay, this is the boy. Now, you may think, well, and that's Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, and he says, وَيُعَقُّ عَنْهُ, and you will give the aqiqah, and things like this. Now you may say, well, I don't really know. Now let me tell you something, people. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grandson, both of his grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, radiallahu anhuma, had their ears pierced, and they both wore earrings. That's correct. Hassan radiallahu an and Hussein radiallahu an, Imam Hussein, wore earrings. In fact, Imam Hussein had 2 earrings. He would wear one. It's described generally, the Arabs describe this to be a qurt, which is in the lower, on the lobe, and they describe that on top to be a shanf. And they say Hussein had both. He had a qurt and a shanf, right? So that's Imam Hussein. You will see that the Shia traditions continue to narrate this. Imam Ja'far, the teacher of Abu Hanifa, the teacher of Imam Malik, who lived in Medina, transmits. He transmits from going through his father Muhammad al-Baqir, through Zain al-Abidin, through Hussein, he transmits this hadith that the Prophet said, Ya Fatima, Uthqubi udhunil Hasan wal Hussein, that pierced the ears of Hassan and Hussein. In another narration, you've got several narrations that Hassan and Hussein wore earrings. Right? And these are the grandsons of the Prophet. These are some of the greatest people in Islam. They wore earrings. Now, you will have even the narration. Now, check this out, people. So you have later Shia Imams kept this alive by continuously, and I say the Imams, but these were the Imams that even Sunnis accept. So you will have narrations where they describe that when Hussein was born, that they thuqiba udhnuhu, that they pierced his ear and so on, and he wore an earring. Now, what's interesting is Hani al-Hadrami, who is one of the people that was who describes the events of Karbala, and he was one of the people that is involved in martyring Hussein radiallahu an. He describes that when we attacked him, he says when he fell, in fact the wording is, he says, Inni la waqifun ashiru ashara, I was from the 10 that was standing when Hussein fell. He says lamma suri'a al-Hussein wa huwa mad'ur, and he says that when Hussein fell and he was dazed, yaltafitu yaminan wa shimalan, he was looking left and right. He says wa quratahu yatadhabdhaban, and his both earrings were shaking. And he describes the events of when he was obviously one of the people that martyred and killed Hussein radiallahu anh, but he describes the events quite vividly, and other people do as well, that during his final time, Imam Hussein radiallahu anh had 2 earrings. In another narration, they say, وَفِي أُذُنَيْهِ دُرَّتَانِ, in both of his ears he wore earrings. Now, you may think, well, no, that doesn't sound quite right, and I'll come back to this point. Just hold that thought. Let me transmit to you from the Musnad of, coming back to Sunni sources, the Musnad of Abu Ya'la. The Musnad of Abu Ya'la, famous Hanbali Sunni muhaddith. He transmits from a great scholar of hadith, Abu al-Manhal, who says when he went to visit Abu Baraz al-Aslami, he says, and I was still a young man, وَفِي أُذُنِي, he says, وَإِنَّ فِي أُذُنَيَّ قُرَطَيْن, and I used to have 2 earrings at that time when I used to study hadith. That's in the Musnad of Abu Ya'la. Let's not stop there, people. People may say, who's Abu al-Manhal? Okay, let's go to a greater scholar. Let's go to a greater one. Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Allah, the great muhaddith and hafiz of Makkah from the Salaf era. Shu'bah, as transmitted by Dhahabi in Sirah A'lam al-Nubala, in volume 8, page 462, people. He mentions that I ra'aytu ibn Uyayna wa huwa ghulam. He says, I saw Ibn Uyayna when he was a young man, carrying these great, he had these great kind of alwah, these things which he would document on and write all these hadith. He says, I saw him where? Wandering in the streets, chilling out with his mates? La. In the Amr ibn Dinar, sitting in a hadith class with the greatest hafiz of hadith of Makkah in that time, Amr ibn Dinar. وَفِي أُذُنِهِ قُرْط, and in his ear he had an earring. This is who? Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Let's not stop, people, not stop. Let's keep on. Who can be a greater legend from the Salaf than Sufyan ibn Uyayna? You guessed it, people. who Sufyan ibn Uyayna himself says that was the greatest scholar in Hijaz in his time. None other than the alim of Medina, people. Imam Malik ibn Anas. You'll find my own teacher, Abdul Ghani al-Diqar, one of the greatest ulama of Sham. He has a book on Imam Malik in the silsila of the great people of this ummah. He has about the 4 imams, he has mainly about great imams, especially the 4 and people like that. In his book of Imam Malik, what does he say? He documents, this was one of the greatest scholars of his era. He was A'lamun Nas, Abdul Ghani al-Diqar. He's the one I've spoken of before, by the way, in my interviews, where I've said he was an old man, had a great sense of humor, and he used to sometimes try and trip people over, and he was well known in Sham. He was well known throughout the Arab world in his era. He used to have a regular weekly dars from Fathul Bari, teaching a commentary on Bukhari, and he was deemed the most knowledgeable person bi Kitabi Sibawayh in his era, in his time. This was, we're talking like the 90s and so on. He won like countless awards for his knowledge on things like that. And he was really fascinated, by the way, when he met me, especially me being Pakistani ethnically and being Maliki. He found that very unique. Now that time I used to have these long curtains, and I mentioned he used to find that very fascinating, my kind of, but I used to always meet him in that masjid and chat to him about issues. But in his book, he begins where he's speaking about Imam Malik, and he says, وَظَفَرَ بِالرَّبِيعَةِ, and Imam Malik was fortunate to then, he really pounced on this opportunity to study with Rabi'atul Ra'i, one of the great ulama of Medina. And he says, وَهُوَ فِي مَيْعَةِ الشَّبْ, and he was still, at this time Malik was still bursting with youth. He was a young man. مَا يَزَالُ الْقُرْطِ, مَا يَزَالُ الْقُرْطِ, people, فِي أُذْنِهِ, he still had an earring on in his ear. This is who? Imam Malik. This is then transmitted again by another, you've got another scholar, Maliki scholar, Sheikh Tahir Muhammad Dardiri, who wrote a book which was then authorized and, is part of his tahqiq at al-Qura. He's a Sudanese great sheikh. I mean, he's got hadith durus, they're on YouTube and things like that. In his book, his takhrij of the ahadith of the Mudawwana, in the introduction to Imam Malik, he mentions the same thing. وَكَانَ فِي أُذْنِهِ قُرْطٍ. Imam Malik would have an earring in his ear, especially when he was a young man. Maybe in later age, whether he kept it in or not, but he wore it whilst he was a young man. And hence you have the tradition as well. Imam Malik's son wore an earring. Muhammad, he would often be, when people looked at him and he was playing with the falcon, and he would wear an earring. And that was, the story is kind of well known. But let's not stop there. People will then say, what else? Where are these traditions, people? What else have we got? People, Al-Bayan wa Tahsil by Ibn Rushd al-Jadd, the daddy Ibn Rushd. وَسُئِلَ, he's speaking about Imam Malik. وَسُئِلَ عَنْ قُرْطِ الذَّهَبِ لِلصَّبِي. He's asked about a golden earring for young boys. قَالَ تَرْكُهُ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ فِي الْغِلْمَانِ. He said, it's better to leave it for young men. قَالَ Ibn Rushd الْكَرَاهَ فِي هَذَا بَيِّنَةٌ. He says, why is it discouraged? That's obvious. لأن الصبي, he goes on to say, فَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ مُتَعَبِّدًا فَوَالِدُهُ مُتَعَبِّدٌ فِي. Now he says that because even if the child isn't mukallaf, his parent is mukallaf. So as it's not, فَكَمَا لَا يَحِلُّ لَهُ أَن يَسْقِيَهُ الْخَمَرِ, so as he shouldn't be giving him alcohol to drink, فَكَذَلِكَ لَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ أَن يُحَلِّيَهُ بِالذَّهَبِ. So likewise, he shouldn't be adorning his son with gold. The issue was golden earrings. The question that he asks Malik, young boys wearing golden earrings, what is your ruling? And Imam Malik said, I prefer that they don't. Okay, so this is from Bayan wa Tahsil, people. You've got volume 18, page 441, Kitab al-Jami' al-Thamin, kebab asa. You know, some of these Paki debaters, they go, this volume, this page, this number, left side. So there you go, huh? Kebab asa, people, kebab asa. Right, so you've got that. Then you've got rulings. Now check this out. You've got Al-Lakhmi. He's being asked in his tafsirah that about certain things, if when you punish certain people for what they steal. Now look at what was often being stolen. Look at what was often being stolen. And he discusses this mas'ala and he says, وَإِن سَرَقَ شَيْئًا. He says, what about from a young boy, if they got a young boy and they robbed him? Is that, because what they're debating is what is a hirs, what is guarded property, and what, like assets, like you've hidden something and something isn't hidden, like you just put it here and somebody takes it. Then there's a distinction between robbery and theft. So they're drawing this distinction, and they're looking at the issue. What about if you're wearing something, like I'm wearing a necklace, somebody snatches it? And something that would often happen, and he speaks about young boy, like a young boy, and he says, "O saraqa qurtan min udhunihi." What if he stole the earring from the boy? فَإِنْ كَانَ الصَّبِيُّ كَبِيرًا يَحْرِزُ مَا عَلَيْهِ. So he says, if the boy was old enough, he was like a young man, and they robbed his earring, then that is protected. Like they would be punished, like that would count as theft. But he says, if it was a young boy who, like an infant, doesn't know what's going on, then he discusses that ruling of hirs. But look at this being a common issue, that boys wearing earrings. So this ruling, and you might think, well, really, Lakhmi saying it. People, young Malik, An-Nawadir was Ziyadat. An-Nawadir was Ziyadat, people. Same thing, same issue. Hundreds of years, this is in the 4th century, 300s, people. Lakhmi, you're talking 100 years later. This, 100 years earlier, look, the same issue. وَمَنْ سَرَقَ قُرْطًا. Whosoever stole an earring min udhni sabi, or siwaran, or a bracelet or bangle that he was wearing. فَأَمَّا الصَّغِيرُ لَا يَعْقِلْ وَلَا. He's talking about the same issue. Does it count as a... So Ibn Abi Zayd is addressing it as well, who lived in Tunis, a different North Africa. So you can see these rulings being discussed by ulama right throughout. So it's very clear the early generations did not see this as something to do with women or restricted to women. In fact, they generally always, their young boys especially, they would make them wear. And here, what's interesting is Imam San'ani in his Subul Salam, under Babul Aqiqah, he brings the narration. He says that that this was also a Hanafi, according to the Hanafiya, it was also a ruling. Now, let me just see where's it gone? Where's it gone? Imatatul Adha Sahahu من حديث حسن بن حسين حديث فعله الدليل فحب لهذا كبير قال المنكر نمجده. But he also brings here, I'm just trying to see where it is, that he says that Qadi Khan from the Hanafiya said that the tifl, the young boy, has his ear pierced. But then later on the Hanafiya may disagree with Qadi Khan and say that that's only talking about a girl. But the word used by Qadi Khan is a tifl. Okay. Anyway, but that's not, because I know that Hanafiya won't accept it anyway, but he does bring the Oh, right. So, here it is. He says that the Hanbalis said that that you shouldn't even give girls an earring because it's harmful. But he goes on to say, وفي فتاوى قاضي خان من الحنفية لا بأس بثقب أذن الطفل لأنهم كانوا في الجاهلية يفعلونه, because he says it's no problem according to Qadi Khan from the Hanafiya for boys to have an earring, because in Jahiliyyah they used to do this. وَلَمْ يُنْكِرْهُ عَلَيْهِمُ النَّبِيُّ, and the Prophet did not criticize it or object to it. Now, I know some Hanafis may say that, oh, you know, that was really about girls, but the point is, there it is. Now, if you look at those people who opposed earrings, a lot of them said that the ruling for it was because it caused harm. But then the issue is, if you have, if you can do it for girls, then you should be able to do it for guys. It makes no difference. The ruling is the same. Okay, I hope that clarifies. The other thing I would state is, if people are saying what makes it impermissible is it imitates women, it does not imitate women. You have thousands of years of history of men equally wearing earrings. And then I would say that, look, what about kuhl, wearing eyeliner like surma? Many people claim, many men, religious men in the Indo-Pak world wear eyeliner. Now you would think Imam Malik didn't like it, because he said it's not sunnah, this was just something done for medicinal purposes. Yet these people feel there's no problem in men wearing eyeliner, which is definitely deemed effeminate today. So you see, these things are simply cultural matters. Another issue somebody may state is that you said Imam Hassan and Hussein wore earrings, which they did. I do actually believe that Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan wore earrings. Now, people may say, yes, but that is transmitted by the Shia sources. And I would say, yes, that's true. It is transmitted by the Shia sources. So they would say, well, we can't accept anything but from the Shia. But I would ask you, look, listen, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Why can't, like, this rule that everything the Shia say must be a lie is so ridiculous. It's so biased. It's so prejudiced that we happen to be the lucky ones that have everything. Everything. Why would the Shia say something like that about Imam Hussein? Why? Like, why would they transmit it? Why would Imam Ja'far, who's the teacher of Imam Malik, who's the teacher of, in their books, transmit from Hussein, his great-grandfather? Why would he do that, saying something like earrings, unless they were actually factual? It makes no sense for them to discredit their own imams, their own ancestors, the grandsons of the Prophet. It makes no sense. And then if you're to say, well, how can we accept this narration? I don't believe it. Look, nobody's telling you to believe it. But let me make a point here. Let me make a point. Look, there is a rawi, there is a narrator by the name of Imran ibn Hittan, right? This guy is one of the leading Khawarij of his time. Leading Khawarij of his time. He's from the Tabi'een era. Yeah. He is used by Bukhari on more than one occasion in his hadith. At least two come to my mind straight away, where he is being quoted by Imam Bukhari. He's one of the people Imam Bukhari uses as a narrator, as in he's trustworthy. This guy would openly, if you look at the Sirah Alam al-Nubala, if you read Fathul Bari, Ibn Hajar's statement on him, this guy would openly praise Ibn Muljim for killing Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh. Openly. In fact, he has a very famous poem saying that when he struck Ali in the head to kill him, that strike was a strike full of taqwa. And like it's blessed and so on and so forth. He would openly say these things. Yet, Bukhari took from him. Bukhari said, oh, he's okay because he was from the worshipping people of this ummah. What kind of, let's be honest people, I want to ask you a question. I'm not Shia. I disagree with the Shia on their points. I support, the stance of, and my videos are very clear for Muawiyah radiallahu an. I'm not, and the Shia know this about me. I'm not but let's be honest. If we had somebody praising Lu'lu' al-Majusi for killing Umar radiallahu an, let's say there's a narrator in the Tabi'een who writes poems praising the murderer of Umar, would we accept him? So why do we accept the one who's praising the person who murdered Ali radiallahu an? Like, this is just ridiculous. Like, we are just so drowned in prejudice and bias. The point is that these were all great companions. Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Umar, I believe these were all great companions of the Prophet. They were all very close to the Prophet. Sayyidina Ali was murdered by Ibn Muljim. Some guy openly praises him, and he remains praising him till his deathbed. In fact, Ibn Hajar writes in Fathul Bari, some people said he did tawbah, this guy. He says, no, he didn't. He says, هذا بعيد. Now, yet Bukhari accepts him, so we accept him. Vah, aapne kaha aur humne maan liya. The hypocrisy that we have, and this is why it infuriates a lot of the Shia people. But can you blame them? Because here's a guy who's killed Sayyidina Ali, and here's somebody who follows that person and praises him all the time, writes poetry, not only praising him, but praising that he killed Ali. And then Sunnis say, yeah, this guy is fine. We can take from him. But we can't take from Imam Ja'far or any of the Shia Imams if it's in a Shia book, when they're describing that Hussein used to wear earrings. Why? Oh, because it's coming from... That's just stupid. Let's just be honest. I'm trying to be fair. So, and then the fact that many of these great muhaddithin imam wore these earrings, like Abul Manhal, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Imam Malik, all these. And there's a very interesting statement in a book by, it's by Ibn Qudama, I believe, in his Tawabin, where he states one of the most pious people he ever met in his lifetime. He describes this man. He says he was the most God-fearing, not pious, sorry. He says he was the most God-fearing man I met in my life. And he said, and he describes him, and he says he wore an earring. So this is a kind of an overview, a holistic overview, that yes, wearing earrings is permissible for men. Yes, it has always, for thousands of years, been something that men have worn. Often in times of, to show that they don't follow things like the Christian church in Europe, or they defy those things, but many soldiers, the Assyrians and other people, pirates and all these people I spoke of at the beginning of this discussion, all wore earrings. In the Prophet's time, men wore earrings, it's evident. The children definitely wore earrings. Many of the Salaf, the Prophet's own grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, wore earrings. And Imam Malik wore an earring, Sufyan ibn Uyayna wore an earring. But yes, in the generations and hundreds of years later, ulama started to turn against this practice. And they seem to, perhaps they were influenced by the Christian church of Europe, perhaps by other traditions, but they seem to think this is no good. But that's fine, they can think that. But you have, if you do decide to choose it, you have a great precedent. People like Imam Hussein, Imam Malik, all these people who, you're in great company. So that's what I would say. And to say that this is imitating women is ridiculous, because things like kuhl would be more identifying with imitating women, yet people seem to be fine with wearing eyeliner for men. So these are very arbitrary statements. So I hope that's a good kind of holistic overview to demonstrate the permissibility. And I accept people can say whatever they want. They can say it's haram according to them, but the evidences speak for themselves. Right, okay people, let's move on. Right, so I think we've kind of gone on quite a bit there, but I really wanted to give a holistic overview. I think I have to kind of speak about, let's move on to this discussion of women, the blood money, right? Let's move to this discussion, people. Right, now, let me give a backdrop to what's going on here. can we follow Tahiriya? I don't know what Tahiriya is. What is the ruling of Imam Malik on Mut'ah? I know some Malikis are of the understanding, I've got a different video on that Mut'ah is not haram. But that's a different kind of discussion for a different day. Right, okay. Right now, so let's look at this topic, blood money, people. This is an important discussion because today Islam has been questioned by many people for misogyny, for speaking against, for mistreating women, for denying them their rights, for devaluing and denigrating women. This is the accusations and allegations hurled at many Muslims today, or at Islam, may I say. So, right, so what happened is, let me give you a bit of a backdrop to this discussion. I'd been asked this on several occasions before. I didn't think in my right mind people would, I knew this ruling did exist about the blood money, and I've spoken about it previously, not in that much detail, but I've spoken about it. And I didn't think anybody in their right mind would be defending this. However, lo and behold, I was going about my business on Facebook and I came across a post by this Mulvi, Shahid Ali, his name is. I've never met him, but I've known of him through Facebook. He's from the UK, up north. So he had a post where he's attacking Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri. Now, I don't follow Tahir, not necessarily, I don't follow Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri. To me, he's just like any other scholar. He may say certain things I may agree with, certain things I disagree with. However, I saw this post by this Shahid Ali where he was saying Tahir al-Qadri is an utter deviant, and he had a long list of all these signatures stating why he was a deviant. And he was kind of proselytizing that everybody should join in recognizing and boycotting Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri. So I read this and I thought, well, what is this about? And first of all, I kind of commented by saying, look, you know, this post is irrelevant. No, this doesn't, it's 2019, mate. Wake up. Nobody really cares what some Mulvis think. You know, this freedom of speech. But then anyway, I looked into his post, read into it. So one of the key issues he lists for why he's against Tahir al-Qadri and why he considers him a deviant, a clear deviant, is this blood money issue. Now, what is this blood money issue? This blood money issue is that allegedly, these people, these Mulvis are claiming that if a woman was killed, she dies in an accident or something like this, if you end up accidentally killing a woman, let's say you have a car crash and you kill a person, but the driver happened to be a woman, that woman or her family deserve compensation from you. That's what kind of Islam teaches. So they say, well, the compensation for a woman will only be half of the compensation for a man. So a woman will only get half. Now, they say this is not based on, like they're saying, well, this is not based on meritocracy. This is not because the man was a president, or he was a king, or he was a scholar, or he was a doctor, or he was... No. It's just simply based on male anatomy. It's simply based because he was a man. So he will automatically get twice the compensation, or the woman will only get half of what a man ought to get. So, Mulvi Shahid Ali is openly on Facebook not only promoting this, but stating anybody who does not believe this is a deviant. This is a guy who's living in the UK. I don't know where, I think maybe Bradford or somewhere he lives. And I think claims to have some background in law. Some Mulvi Sahib who seriously has lost his mind. Now, he had a list of so many ulama apparently supporting this. But the reason why I'm choosing Shahid Ali as a primary addressee is because I don't know whether those people in that list had really said that or has he just added their names, or have they, because it could be one thing that you know of this ruling but you're embarrassed by it and you don't want to speak about it, but you're worried about your sect and stuff like this. And it's another thing that openly promoting, not only promoting this ruling, but calling anybody who challenges it a deviant. So I have to say, first of all, before getting into this ruling, I applaud Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri for challenging this ruling, as many other scholars have challenged as well. So first of all, great credit to him on that note. Now this ruling, people, let's get back to Maulvi Shahid Ali Ji. What is it with misogyny, people? What is it with misogyny? What is it with, for simply having a penis, a guy is worth twice the value of a woman? What? Is this in the Quran? No. Is this in the Sunnah? No. Acha, people said so. Acha, people said so. Theek hai. Right. So first of all, I would say, do they have any Sahih Hadith on? Do they have the Quran? No. What do we have in the Quran? Let's look at what we do have in the Quran, people. What we do have in the Quran is a verse in Surah An-Nisa, verse 92. Right? Yaar, Quran hai, Maulvi Shahid Sahib. Quran ki taraf chalte hain, yaar. Let's go to the Quran. Right, so Surah Nisa, verse 92. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا. It is not for a believer to kill a believer. إِلَّا خَطَعًا, except by mistake. وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَعًا. And whosoever does accidentally kill a believer, then فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةً, then he can free a slave or do this. وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِ. And he must give compensation to the family. Okay, so does Allah differentiate? Does Allah say here that, does Allah say, oh, but if it's a woman, give half? La. Okay, is there any other, Ya Allah, is there any other verse in which you address us with these matters? What's that? Oh, there is. Surah Ma'idah. Acha. Surah Ma'idah, verse 32. God, I wonder what's in Surah Ma'idah verse. Maybe there's something for Maulvi Shahid Ali. Oh, من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Whosoever kills a single soul is as though he has killed mankind. Is it? Ya Allah, is there a distinction? Is there a distinction? La. What about كتب عليكم القصاص في القتلى? Another verse you have in Surah Baqarah about, you have qisas written for you. That al-hurru bil-hurri wal-abdu bil-abdi. That al-dhakaru bil... You have al-unth, that like for like. And this was an exact reiteration of what was in the Torah. That you have like for like, that there is retaliation if there is... does Allah make a distinction? No. Okay. Sabran. Espérame, mi amor. Espérame. Wait. Hang on, people. Hang on. What about a hadith? Do we have any hadith? Yes, people. We have some hadith. We have a hadith that is transmitted by Abu Huraira, by Ali radiallahu an, by Umar, by Amr ibn As radiallahu an. We have a hadith that is in Abdul Razzaq. You have at least 3 narrations. Ibn Abi Shayba, you have 2 narrations. In the Musnad of Ahmad, you have 2 narrations. In Abu Dawood, you have 1 narration. In Ibn Hibban, you have 1 narration. In Dar Qutni, you have 1 narration. And that is Innal Muslimina Yadun ala man siwahum. That Muslims are one, united against those that oppose them. تَتَكَافَأُ دِمَاؤُهُم. The Muslims' blood is equal. No, you don't just put somebody down just because they're a woman, that they get half. It's ridiculous, absurd. So you ask them that, okay, lahza, is there anything else? Yes, people. What about in Sunan al-Nisa'i? In Sunan al-Nisa'i, you have the hadith, في النفس المؤمنة مئة من الإبل. For any Muslim soul, the compensation that of the time the Prophet had said as 100 camels were given. Any Muslim's believing soul, nafsim mu'mina. In fact, the word used is feminine. Nafsim mu'mina. The Prophet didn't say, oh, وَإِذَا كَانَتْ أُنْثَى فَنِصْفُ مَا عَلَى. La. This one not nice. What else, people? Most of the Muslim scholars all accepted that if a man killed a woman or a woman killed that they had, if it was murder, there was retaliation. Was there half a retaliation? No. La. Abadan. And who are some of the ulama that have challenged this before me? You'll get many from early Islam. Ibn Ulayya challenged it, who was a great hafiz from the Hufad of Hadith. You have other people that have touched up on the topic, Ibn Hazm. You have in more from the 19th century, you have Muhammad Abdu, Sheikh Rashid Rida, the great ulama of Al-Azhar. You've got Sheikh Muhammad Abu Zahra, Muhammad Al-Ghazali, Sheikh Shaltut, all the great leaders of Al-Azhar, coming right down to Qardawi. You've got Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri, obviously from this day and age. You've got Allama Javed Ghamidi. All these other ulama have challenged this analysis. Now people will say, oh, but all the scholars in the past agreed. What scholars agreed? The question is, even if men did say this, I'm not saying that scholars did not say this. People might say this ijma. What did Imam Ahmad say? Man idda al-ijma fahuwa kadhib. Anybody who claims ijma is a liar. Right, so the fact that men said this, I'm not denying that scholars didn't say this. They said this. But I'm asking you for Quran wa Sunnah. Quran wa Sunnah. I'm not asking you li'aqwal al-rijal. Of course, many men may have said this. So what, we should blindly follow them if they said this? All of those men said, you can enslave people and hold them as slaves. Do you accept that? That's ridiculous. Many of those people may have said things like they may have supported rape, marital rape. Many of those men endorse things like rape of slaves. Would you endorse that? Just because some man said it who lived in a medieval time, even if he may have been a pious person, he was a victim of his environment, of people around him. We do not blindly follow people. I ask you for the Quran and Sunnah. I ask you, okay, the Quran seems to be against you. At least bring me a hadith. Bring me one hadith. Bukhari? La. No Bukhari in this, people. No Bukhari. Bukhari gayi. No Bukhari. Muslim? La. No Muslim in this. Arba'a? Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Nasa'i? La. All of them have gone. So they bring us a hadith, people. They bring us a hadith. Mashallah. Maulvi Shahid Sahib, let me help you a little. Let me give you the hadith. Aapse kahan hoga yaar? You're not going to be able to bring the hadith. Let me give you your evidences. I'm playing both sides here. Yaar, ye ho kya raha yaar? Confused ho raha hu. Right, so there's a hadith transmitted in Bayhaqi. The hadith is by Mu'adh ibn Jabal, allegedly, that diyatul mar'a ala nisfin min diyatil rajul, that the blood money of a woman is half of that of a man. This has you've got Bakr ibn Khunais in this riwayah, who is da'if, Ibn al-Madini, Al-Uqayli, Abu Zur'a, Al-Bazzar, Ibn Hibban, Abu Hatim, Ad-Darqutni, An-Nasa'i, they all said da'if. Okay? What about the statement of Umar, wadiyatul hurratul muslima 500 dinar? Once again, Muslim ibn Khalid, Az-Zinji, Abu Hatim said unacceptable, Bukhari said munkar, Saji said kathirul ghalat. They even bring a narration in Ibn Abi Shayba saying, La yuqtalu ar-rajul bil mar'a idha qatalaha amdan. Check that out. That a man will not be killed in compensation for a woman even if he killed her intentionally. Ya salam. Maulvi Sahab, what to do? What to do? Huh? What to do? Ye kya ho raha hai? This explaining Islam not like eating rice plate, you know. Islam not like eating rice plate. Yaar, these Maulvis, agar inko fursat to mile, you know, if they get a break from if they get a biryani break, then maybe we can discuss these narrations. I can't believe in 2019, people who are allegedly educated in the British system are teaching people that they have pulpits, they are imams. Can you imagine the women or the girls that are studying with this guy? To him, they are half and they're openly teaching this in Britain in 2019. That women simply for not having a penis are half the value of men. Yaar ye penis ka chaska kya hai yaar? What's this obsession? Phallocentric obsession. I mean, हम भी तो मदरसे गए थे यार. We went to madrasa as well. ये चस्का क्या है boss? What's this? If you have used automatic, now just look at the blasphemy. That means any random, so long as he's Muslim, any local Muslim random guy, loser, who could be whoever, but if he's Muslim, you could take the greatest of women throughout history, starting people like Maryam alayhi salam, prophets, like the mother of Jesus, coming right down to, you got the wives of the prophets, Ummahatul Mu'mineen, the mothers of believers, Aisha radiallahu anha, all these great people. To these people are worth half any random man who has a penis. Just for that. How blasphemous is that statement? That is ridiculous. Abhi yaar, at least look what the Prophet taught. Look, check, you have these mulvis saying this nonsense, and let's go to what the Prophet of God said. When he was asked, Man abar, who should I be more dutiful to? He said, Ummak, your mother. And the person said, who? He said, Ummak, your mother. The person who said, Ummak. I mean, honor your mothers, yaar. I mean, your mother, like in your eyes, like your mother's worth half any guy just because the guy's got, just because he's born with something. That's it. That is so crazy. I seriously can't believe that this is what is being taught in 2019. Ya salam. Honestly, I'm so disappointed in these kind of people. I ask Maulvi Shahid Ali Ji, I invite you, have a dialogue with